For as long as I've been a fan of anime and manga, I've dreamt of my own what-if scenarios for several series. By making one slight change within the plot, it can have a massive impact upon the story that unfolds, similar to a butterfly effect. One notable change that I've thought a lot about, which would have made the 1000-Year Blood War arc even more interesting than it already was, is the idea of Aizen having accepted Yhwach's offer and joined his Quincy army right at the start of the arc. Aizen teaming up with Yhwach, I believe, would have signaled the end of the Soul Society. We are talking about two of the most powerful antagonists in the history of shonen existing within the same universe and deciding to work together. Aizen's motives do clash with Yhwach's, but this would give an interesting sense of tension to their dynamic, since Yhwach would not be able to completely trust him, on the chance that Aizen would betray him the second that he has the opportunity to continue with his own desires. Yhwach was able to make it to the Soul King's palace, and in general he managed to accomplish a lot more than Aizen did, so it is plausible to assume that Aizen would have worked together with Yhwach in order to reach the Soul King. Then he would reveal his true colors by betraying him and taking the throne for himself. That is just one point in this what if scenario. I want to now dive into how several story beats would have been affected by Aizen having joined Yhwach. So before I give everything away in the intro, let's dive into my first Bleach what if scenario by discussing the fascinating possibility of Aizen having teamed up with the Quincy. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. One of the most hyped lines within the early portions of the 1000-Year Blood War arc is when Yhwach reveals to Head Captain Yamamoto that he had visited Aizen within Muken and had made him an offer to join his army. We know that within the manga he had refused Yhwach's offer, but what if Aizen had agreed to join the Quincy and had become a member of the Wanden Reich? There are a lot of fascinating scenarios that we can imagine just with this one change within the plot. Aizen is not the most trustworthy individual, so it would benefit Yhwach if he remained seated on Chair-sama, while only being able to utilize a small portion of his power. We know that despite being sealed and seated on Chair-sama, he was still able to use Kyoka on Yhwach to manipulate his perception of time, and he was able to communicate with him via his spiritual pressure. For context, this would be his primary means of combat and communication. I also think that he would stay seated on Chair-sama until Yhwach acquires the Almighty, so he would be exclusively using Kyoka on the Shinigami to make them believe that he is no longer restrained and sealed on Chair-sama. So after Aizen agrees to work for Yhwach, I'm guessing Hashwald will be wheelchairing him out of Muken, and they would appear before a shocked and exhausted Yamamoto, who after just having used his Bankai to defeat a doppelganger, is now facing the real Yhwach, who is accompanied by Aizen. The spiritual pressure of Aizen would undoubtedly resonate throughout the Soul Society, adding further insult to injury, as the Gotei 13 begin to despair at how impossible it will be to defeat the Quincy army and Aizen. We may even have a small exchange between Aizen and Yamamoto here. It would probably be a smug line about how the inevitable demise of Yamamoto's Gotei 13 had occurred sooner than Aizen had expected. Yamamoto would strike towards Aizen, but would be cut off by Yhwach, who goes on to explain how he and the Gotei 13 of today are weak. After killing Yamamoto, they all sense Ichigo arriving within the Soul Society. Now this is where I think things would get fascinating, as Ichigo wouldn't need to even ask if Yhwach is the enemy's leader, as they'd see Aizen alongside Yhwach and would immediately attack them. Ichigo is feeling totally unhinged here because of the devastation around him, and with the pleas of Byakuya requesting for him to protect the Soul Society still fresh in his mind, so we can understand why Ichigo is behaving irrationally here. In typical Aizen fashion, he would comment on the loss of his composure, as he'd feel disappointed that he isn't as well composed as he was during their final battle over 17 months ago. Aizen most likely would attempt to sink Ichigo into despair by asking if he really believes that he can stop the combined might of Aizen and Yhwach. I think until he reveals his true intentions, Aizen will play an act and do what he can to assist Yhwach, as he would assist the Quincy in accomplishing their desires, but only as a means of earning their trust until the endgame of the story arc. Yhwach would be aware that his time outside of the shadows is almost up, so it would end his encounter with Ichigo after they witness him using Blutveen subconsciously to protect himself. Aizen wouldn't have used Kyoka on him just yet. In this what if scenario, he would save the opportunity to use it until he betrays him much later on. Additionally, at this point he doesn't want Yhwach to become suspicious of his true intentions so early on in the story, but I do think that he would do a minor test here to ensure that Yhwach can be under the influence of his power, just so that he could use Kyoka later on. We would then see Aizen present among the Wanden Reich when Yhwach Yhwach announces that Uryu will become his successor. Aizen would be reminded of how dysfunctional his Espada were upon seeing the shock of a few Sternritter who appeared to doubt Yhwach's decision. Aizen would return from the gathering as he's still sealed on Chair-sama along with Yhwach, Hashwat and Uryu as they begin the second invasion of the Soul Society. Hints of Aizen's true desires would begin to surface after he hears Yhwach's Emperor's song, particularly the line about the Quincy King taking over the world in 9 days. Aizen may comment on the portion of the Emperor's song which states that Yhwach will rule the world, as he clarifies that nobody can rule over him, even a confined king who regains his power after 1000 years. When they end up leaving the Soul Society after the second invasion begins, they immediately make their way over to the Soul King's palace, and this is thanks to Ichigo temporarily clearing a path for them. Aizen will probably smirk to himself as he states that Yhwach is fortunate that he didn't have to construct an Oken to break into the palace. Upon arriving at the Soul King's palace, he would assist Yhwach by using Kyoka against the Zero Division and their underlings. While he would be taking out the Soul King's guards, Yhwach would face off against Ichibei. At this point, Aizen would still remain sealed on Chair-sama until Yhwach's battle against Ichibei, where the Almighty is finally activated. At this point, after Ichibei's defeat, Aizen fulfills one of his key objectives by arriving at the Soul King's palace. Now he is at a crossroads here, where he needs to decide to either continue this facade of supporting Yhwach or to betray him. This, I believe, is dependent upon Yhwach's actions. If the Quincy leader decides to use the Almighty to destroy Chair-sama and remove all of the seals placed upon Aizen, or if he reveals that he doesn't trust Aizen by only destroying Chair-sama and deciding to remove a few and not all of the seals placed on him. Even for Yhwach, Aizen would be a formidable threat if he was set completely free because of his incredible Reiatsu that he acquires after having fused with the Hokyoku. So for this reason, I don't think that he would totally trust him, as we learn later on that Yhwach has no problem with sacrificing his underlings for the greater good, which is his desire to remove the concept of death from reality. After reaching the Soul King's palace, he would remain accompanying Yhwach and witness Ichigo arriving and killing the Soul King after Yhwach controls the Quincy blood flowing through his body. Aizen would probably comment and say that this is the curse of someone who is born special, but Ichigo is preoccupied with Yhwach here. Aizen will probably help to defend Yhwach by using his Reiatsu and Kyoka against Yoriichi. At this point, he is not too bothered if Yhwach ends up killing the Soul King, but it's important to clarify that he draws the line at Yhwach becoming the new ruler of reality. So after the point that Yhwach absorbs Mimihagi and Ichigo and the others are thrown off of the Soul King's palace, Aizen would reveal his true intentions by intervening at the moment that Yhwach tries to absorb the power of the Soul King. He would tell him that an absent god is better than a spoiled Quincy King. He reveals that he will not allow himself to be controlled by anyone, including the son of the Soul King. Yhwach responds by saying that he was wondering when Aizen would reveal his true intentions, as he tells him that his almighty ability is an incredible power that allows him to see into the future, so he had already foresaw Aizen's betrayal. Meanwhile, Aizen questions that if the Almighty is so powerful, then why is it that he didn't remove all of the seals placed upon him? He asks if he was afraid of his immense Reiatsu. Did he foresee that he would be defeated against an completely unsealed Aizen? In this what-if scenario, we can appreciate that Aizen had strategically used Yhwach and the Quincy to take care of the Soul Society and to find a way to the Soul King's palace without the need for an Oken to be made. He had decided that he would take things over from Yhwach after they had gotten rid of the Soul King. He begins to display his superiority complex as he states that Yhwach doesn't have what it takes to rule reality, as he describes death as a necessity, and that Yhwach is simply afraid of dying and he is a coward who is unfit to sit upon the heavens. Yhwach doesn't have time to entertain Aizen, as he makes quick work of him by absorbing his Reiatsu, impaling him and throwing him off of the royal palace as he falls down to the Soul Society below. Now after the leader of the Quincy defeats Ichigo, he appears once again within the Soul Society, as this is where things would play out similar to how they did within the manga, with Aizen once again confronting Yhwach, but this time he uses Kyoka, making him believe that he is battling Ichigo, Renji and himself at the same time, when actuality he is just facing off against Aizen on his own. Him having used Kyoka during the final battle was a necessary component to defeating Yhwach. Without this, he wouldn't have been caught off guard by Ichigo's attack, and some have even theorized that Kyoka assisted Uryu in helping him to fire the still silver arrowhead through Yhwach completely undetected. After Yuha's defeat, Shunsui would ensure that Aizen returns to Muken. He seems to have some satisfaction that he was at least able to see the Soul King and step foot onto the Soul King's palace, which helps him to cooperate with the Gote 13. After returning to Muken, he would ponder upon upon Yhwach's motives, giving his iconic speech and courage, going on to explain why death is a necessary construct of reality. Whenever I theorize the idea of Aizen teaming up with Yhwach, it is always a variation of Aizen earning Yhwach's trust, but he always ends up betraying him eventually. However, the powers of the Almighty would prove to be too strong and would easily overwhelm him. This then leaves him with no choice but to work alongside Ichigo and the Gote 13, similar to how he does so in the canon material. This is because ultimately Aizen doesn't want to be controlled by anyone, whether if that is Yhwach or an absent ruler like the Soul King. All of this makes for some very exciting conceptual storytelling, as I've really enjoyed speaking about ideas that I've been building up in my imagination for years. Let me know how you would interpret this what if story of Aizen deciding to team up with Yhwach during the final arc of Bleach. I would love to read all of your versions of this dream scenario, so definitely continue the discussion in the comments. Do you agree on my imagining of how events would have unfolded, or are there areas that you would have added in some more witty Aizen dialogue? Also, if you want to see more of these what if Bleach videos that reimagine the story beats of the manga, then definitely let me know by leaving a comment under this video. Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.